Yep. Inside, I want to kill myself. We are on an 0-7 run over the last 2 days. After tonight was just complete bullshit. So that's how I'm going to start off this show. Horrible Sunday, 1-5. I don't even know what to tell you about that. I just don't want to do this anymore. I have never seen anything like this, man. With the slump continuing, 2 straight losses, not a good day at all. 0-4. I just have not had a good season, man. What can this slump that I'm on? The slump continues. I've reached a new peak, actually. I'm going to burn my Bruins hat, man. I don't know what is going on with the Bruins. March 8th, is that what it is? I don't even know. It's March 9th, I think. Who even knows, man? I don't know what day it is anymore. I don't even know what day it is anymore, man. Back with you after the worst day that I could possibly have. Back with you, as I always am. Until I die, at least. 0-2 yesterday, and yesterday did not go well for me. 0-5. The worst month that I've ever had in my 18 years doing this. I don't know what to even tell you about this anymore. Broke the slump yesterday as the slump discontinues. The slump continues. Somebody fucking kill me, please. I don't even know what I should do at this point other than potentially end it all. What's up, everybody? It's Toad back with you. Toadstool Sports. It is Friday, March 13th. Good day yesterday. Miami, Ohio lost. I was correct about my opinion on that. My plays went 4-0. All was right with the world, or at least it was yesterday. If only I was actually throwing actual money on these games right now, that would be a lot better. St. Bonaventure, they were losing a lot of that game. It wasn't looking good, but they came back and they won the game outright. You know, you could argue that one was a little bit lucky, I guess, but it was a low-scoring game. George Mason definitely kind of fell apart in that one. So we did get that one right. Washington, people will say that one was lucky because Wisconsin was winning by, probably close to 20 points in the middle of that game, but that's just the type of game where I think the back door is always open. And once it kind of crept back to like 13-12, I'm like, yeah, this actually has a chance. I didn't think Washington was going to almost win the game, which is kind of what happened. They got to within like 1 point. I did watch the end of it. They wound up losing by 3, and there was, I don't know, a weird situation in the end that didn't affect the straight up or spread outcome where Washington hit another shot right at the buzzer, and then they counted it, and then they wound up determining it didn't count, so they lost by 3 instead of 1, which didn't matter. I don't care, but I'd care more because I had a little, I tell you to sprinkle on the money line, so I would care more if it affected the straight up outcome, of course, which it did not, but we did get the win with Washington. Nice comeback, or really, I think Wisconsin just kind of started packing it in early, maybe too early. And then Kent State, that was a pretty easy one. Wasn't looking that great towards the end of the first half, but they did have the lead going into halftime. They basically got the momentum going into halftime, and then they turned it on later, I think. I don't know, because I was at Leonardo Joni's show last night. She's awesome, hilarious comedian. That was a fun time. So that's why I didn't do the Thursday bracketology last night. I need to release my updated bracketology as well. I'll probably just do a bracketology show like shortly after I do this show. I don't know. I got to figure it out. I'll do something about it and just kind of not include what's been going on today yet. And then we won with the Washington Wizards last night as well. I don't know exactly what happened in that game. What was the final score in that game? I really don't even know. I know they covered. They actually took Orlando to overtime, and they lost by 5. All right. Good. All right. That was a good call, I guess. All right. I don't know. I'll have to look into what actually happened in that game. All right, let's go to today, man. We got to cover all this college basketball. There's a lot less hockey to deal with today, so there is that. I don't have any plays outside of college basketball today. I'm trying to be selective as usual. I got 2 college basketball plays. The USA Network is going to have the A10 game. A10 always starting early, man. This is George Washington and St. Louis. I think this is like the 4 versus the 1 in the tournament here. Now, George Washington does have an edge when you start handicapping this right out of the gate because they played yesterday. So, it's again, I'll say it's counterintuitive. People think that that's a disadvantage if a team played yesterday. But in a tournament setting like this, it's actually not. It might start becoming a disadvantage when a team has played, if you're getting to the point where a team's playing like 5 games in 5 days or something, right? You have to try to figure out, is this team tired yet or something like that? Like Georgia Southern ran out of steam in their tournament, That's not going to happen yet with George Washington. And additionally, they've played 1 game so far in the tournament, and additionally, they didn't look good. But the final score actually was not indicative of what happened in that game. George Washington, they pretty much handled that game. They beat, who did they beat yesterday? I don't even remember who they beat, but they were winning that game easily throughout the majority of that game. And then I don't know what happened. It was Fordham, I think. But Fordham, they play a slow pace. George Washington, even though they're a really good offense, for some reason they're a horrific free throw shooting team. They were just missing free throws all over the place at the end of that game too. So it looks like they barely won the game basically, which is actually kind of true. But they really had a handle on that game for most of the game. So that is an advantage to George Washington. The fact that they had an ugly game yesterday against Fordham. Now they got to play St. Louis, but St. Louis is a completely different animal than Fordham, obviously. They're going to play faster than Fordham. It's going to be a completely different style here. Now, George Washington, they did almost beat St. Louis at St. Louis earlier this season. So it's an interesting situation where I think that actually gives St. Louis a little bit of an advantage that they normally wouldn't have. That means they're going to take George Washington more seriously because they know that George Washington almost came into their place and beat them. Now, St. Louis is still at a disadvantage in that they haven't played yet in this tournament. This whole tournament is in Pittsburgh, by the way. So that doesn't really help either team. The location doesn't. But yeah, what you have is George Washington is already acclimated to the venue, whereas St. Louis is not. So St. Louis is going to have to get their bearings under them. Although I guess one good thing for St. Louis is they have one of the shortest field goal attempt distance in the country, which means they take a lot of close shots. So if that's how a team operates, you don't have to worry that much about them figuring out the sight lines again and whatever. Although St. Louis does also still shoot threes and stuff like that. But they do take a lot of really close 2-pointers, and the sight lines won't matter as far as that's concerned. Now, do I think St. Louis is going to lose this game? I don't, but I would probably fade them in this game. They're a 7-point favorite, which is not that much. 72% of tickets on them, 71 now. 85% of the cash on George Washington. Money is indicating on George Washington, but I do think St. Louis does remember George Washington almost beating them, so they might be able to turn it on for that reason and make some adjustments from that. The other good thing for St. Louis is they ended the season on a bad note. They had started playing bad. They lost 3 of their last 6 games, and they got killed in their final game against George Mason. So I think St. Louis, that's actually a good thing for them. That the conference tournament can be like a reset. Let's get back to our winning ways. But this is not a game that I want to have any involvement in, though. St. Bonaventure and Dayton is the second game up in the A10. Dayton also has not played yet in this tournament. Bonaventure is playing a third game in 3 days. They were our winner yesterday, and they did play in the opening day of this tournament against LaSalle, but that was sort of like a bye, to be honest. Sorry to LaSalle, but easy win for Bonaventure there. Bonaventure did get tested yesterday, but they have the momentum right now, man. And again, Dayton is coming into this without having played yet in this tournament. Dayton is a good team, though. They're a 7-point favorite here. 61% of tickets, 79% of the cash on Bonaventure here. I'll lean to Bonaventure just because they do have the edge of having played in the tournament already. This one's not really a strong opinion at all, though. These teams, when they played during the season, because I always figure I have to shout that out, because it is part of the handicap. Dayton won by 2 at home. I think that might have been the only time they played Bonaventure, so that was a really close call. So Dayton might take them more seriously for that reason, because Bonaventure actually did almost beat them. But I've been telling you this Bonaventure team is not as bad as they look. They're one of the underrated teams in this conference. So is George Washington, by the way. So keeping all that in mind, 5 p.m. we have Duquesne and VCU. VCU, the heaviest favorite in the tournament here. I think VCU is actually going to win this tournament. Their side of the bracket sets up a lot better, whereas St. Louis and Dayton might have to run into each other, and that will be a difficult game for either one of those teams to win if it happens, which it's not even guaranteed that that's going to happen. VCU is a 9-point favorite here, 53% of tickets, 79% of the cash on VCU. VCU also has not played yet in this tournament, so they're not acclimated to the venue. They're the only team right now that looks like they are taking the money out of those teams that haven't played yet in the tournament. Now, Duquesne is playing in their home city, so they do have a little bit of an edge in that regard. Let's see. Duquesne, they did play in the tournament already yesterday. They beat Rhode Island. I think that was the only game they played in the tournament so far. So they do have a little bit of momentum. They're acclimated to the venue, etc. They're in their own city, so I'm not going to come in and lay points with VCU here. I don't even know if I agree with this market read, to be honest. I do think VCU will win the game, though. Like I said, I think they're going to probably win this tournament at this point. But they did end the season on a good note. They won 3 games in a row. They beat George Mason and Dayton to end the season. So they finished on a good note, and sometimes having time off and then having to start a conference tournament late into the tournament is a bit disruptive. So I would actually probably lean to Duquesne plus the points in that one, but I don't have a strong opinion there either. Final game in the A10 is a play. Oh, here we go. We're going back to the A10 just like yesterday, man. This is one of the 2 best bets, and we're going to take Davidson plus 2 against St. Joe's. First of all, I have no idea why Davidson is the underdog here. I don't know if there's something I'm missing. I mean, the odds makers are rarely wrong. I don't know if they've just skewed the number towards St. Joe's because St. Joe's is like the 3 seed, or maybe even, I think they're the 3 in this tournament. Because VCU is the 2, I think. But still, it doesn't make any sense because Davidson is the better team. I've been talking about how I think St. Joe's is overrated all season. Looking at Davidson here, now they are a somewhat lucky team according to KenPom, but they play slow. They're kind of balanced, not really a huge disparity offense versus defense. Top 100 defense. This Davidson team is really not bad. And according to KenPom, St. Joe's is 12 ranking spots below them. St. Joe's does have a somewhat better defense, believe it or not, but their offense really struggles. So Davidson has a significantly better offense. Again, Davidson is the more balanced team here. Usually I do like the better defense, but not in a case like this where I think the wrong team is favored and that better defense is that wrong favorite. St. Joe's does try to play faster. I think Davidson's going to be able to muck it up and slow it down, which they're not going to want. And you want to talk about luck. St. Joe's is 19th in luck, according to KenPom. So they're one of the luckiest teams in the country, and that's what I've been saying all year. I don't buy St. Joe's. I don't think they're good, even though their defense has been fine this year. Davidson also has the advantage of having played yesterday, and they looked terrible yesterday. So I like that. When you have a team that not only is acclimated to the venue, but they also didn't look good, and they still won the game, that's the sweet spot, baby. They didn't look good against Loyola. And remember, Loyola, Chicago, really bad season for them, but they showed up and played decently in the tournament. They won a game in the tournament, almost won 2 games. Give them credit for that. But Loyola did have the advantage yesterday of having played in the tournament yet again, and Davidson had not played yet. Now, I did actually kind of think Davidson would cover the number yesterday. They had a bad game, man. They got taken into overtime. They never got separation, but they were the better team in this game. Davidson did lead. Maybe they didn't actually. My mistake. Davidson actually did have kind of a bad game. I thought they were leading most of the game because I checked the score a couple of times. I'm wrong about that. They were really never able to get separation here. They actually lost the rebounding battle, which is not a good sign, but they escaped, and that's what I like about it, man. When you have a favorite that escapes against a bad team like that, I think you're going to get a way better effort the next time. And additionally, these 2 teams played not that long ago at Davidson, and Davidson lost the game at home, and you know they were a favorite at home. Although they're actually only 1.5. It's totally bizarre. They're only 1.5 at home, but like KenPom has had them as the better team all year. So I don't know what's going on with what the odds makers have been doing here. Davidson was a 4.5 at the open, though. So, like, seriously, like, somebody, I don't know, if somebody's familiar with the personnel, does Davidson have some sort of injury or something? I have no idea. But I'm not even going to consider it in the handicap. Davidson did win earlier in the season at St. Joe's, by the way, by 6. So the road team won each of the regular season matchups. I like how this sets up, though. And St. Joe's they haven't played yet in the tournament. And they finished the season hot. They finished with 6 wins in a row, including finishing by beating Davidson on the road, like I said. So there's a little bit of a revenge angle for Davidson here. And they finished by beating their rival, LaSalle, even though LaSalle's bad. But still, it's, a satisfying win when you beat your rival. They're Philadelphia schools there. So that's another thing I don't like. So St. Joe's is not accustomed to the venue here yet. And they finished the season on a hot streak. And I think the conference tournament could serve as a reset, especially when you've had extra time off. Like, you finish the season hot, and then you jump into the tournament late into the tournament. Like, I think your momentum is basically completely gone that you had at the end of the season. So we're going to go with Davidson in this one, plus the points. St. Joe's, 64% of the tickets on them, 62% of the cash on Davidson, though. And the total is really low. And that's because Davidson plays super slow. Both teams are better on defense than offense. And St. Joe's is really poor on offense. Again, total 129.5. Really, really low total there. But we're going with the side, as usual with me. Davidson plus the points. Mr. Pinsey, what's up? How did you get Houston minus 6.5? Houston was minus 9. Was that a live bet? Mavs and Ohio. I mean, I leaned to Ohio State, but that was a game that I obviously didn't recommend touching. I thought that game was exactly what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a really close game, unpredictable game. I don't know about the Mavs. I think I probably agreed with that one too, but I don't know. I didn't have a strong opinion on any of those, but nice. No, I would not have done that. No way. I would not have paid more money to get Houston down like that. I would not have done that. I don't do the alternate spread shit. I think the books screw you. You have to pay too much money for that. All right. Next tournament is, what do we have here? Big Ten up next at noon. Ohio State is playing Michigan. Ohio State lost to Michigan at home by 21. That was the only time, I think. No, they played twice. My mistake. They played earlier in the season as well. Michigan won at home by 12. So Michigan won both games by double digits. I think Michigan might be a double-digit favorite in this game. Now, again, I'm going to say Ohio State has a little bit of an advantage in that they played yesterday. These games are all in Chicago. Michigan will have a big fan base there. There's no question about that, especially deeper into the tournament. As their fans start showing up for these later games in the tournament. Ohio State did win, but it was a tough win against Iowa yesterday. So they're coming off of that, but they are acclimated to the venue. They got a little bit of momentum. For Michigan, they finished the season hot. They won 4 games in a row. They won almost all of their late season games. Of course, they only have 2 losses on the season. They took 1 late season loss to Duke in there. They finished the season with a really satisfying win, sweeping their rival, Michigan State. And now they've had a lot of time off, so I do think that could be disruptive to their momentum. And, there could be a little bit of a letdown component here because they beat Michigan State to finish the season. They might not have full focus against Ohio State because they beat them twice this year. I'll lean to Ohio State plus the points in this one. Michigan, 13.5, 60% of the tickets on them. 72% of the cash on Ohio State. Money coming in on Ohio State. I agree with it. Not a real strong opinion or anything, but yeah. That's a terrible way to handicap. I'll tell you that right now. That would have killed you like last year, probably trying to bet against like Duke or something. Although actually, I don't know how often Duke really covered the spread. They probably actually didn't cover more often than they didn't because they're always too much of a favorite. But yeah, that is obviously you should not handicap that way because it's racist. No, it's just it's not going to get you wins. Wisconsin and Illinois is in the afternoon here. Illinois has not played yet in the tournament, but unlike Michigan, Michigan plays fast, and I think some of these fast tempo teams, like that momentum disruption is a little bit worse for those type of teams. Illinois actually plays slow, so the momentum disruption might be a little bit less for them, but the thing about Illinois is that they do have a really, really efficient offense. They do rely on their offense, so their offensive timing might still be thrown off by not having played recently. Wisconsin didn't look as good as maybe they actually were in that game yesterday. We got the win on Washington plus the points. Wisconsin won the game, and they were winning the game by a lot during the middle of the game, so they played better than what it looks like. They, I think, started to rest some of their guys. They did not have Noah Winter playing. I think he's not going to play in this tournament. I think they're going to wait until the big dance to bring him back. So he's one of their big men. He's out. Wisconsin running with a little bit of a shorter rotation here, man. But they've only played one game in the tournament, so they're not going to be like tired yet or anything. They didn't look that bad. Or they looked bad in the final score, I should say, but they were not as bad as they looked, is what I mean to say. So I like that. When a favorite escaped like that, I think they're going to give you a better effort the next time. Now, one hesitation I would have is Illinois might show up for this because Wisconsin actually went into their place and beat them. So, and that was basically, this is in Chicago, so Illinois is going to have a home crowd here. And the last time Wisconsin came into Illinois, into their actual building, they beat them. So that is the reason why Illinois might show up. But again, Wisconsin is acclimated to the venue. Illinois hasn't played for quite a while. Illinois finished the season not exactly hot. They lost 2 of their last 6 games, so that's not as much of a problem for Illinois, like worrying about having their momentum disrupted. I think I would still lean to taking the points with Wisconsin here, though. And Illinois does play slow, even though they do score a lot. Might make it a little bit more difficult for them to cover a number like this. -8.5 is the number on them. 74% of tickets, 77% of the cash on Wisconsin. I worry that it does look like Wisconsin's a little bit of a public dog here, but the money looks like it might be on their side as well. Purdue and Nebraska is one of those games that I kind of just call like the switch. I don't know what else to call it, where you have the lesser ranked team, the lower seeded team is actually the better team and the favorite, and that's Purdue. So I like to look for spots like that. This is not one of my plays, but I like Purdue in this game. But 3.5, maybe a little bit high. The last time these teams played, Purdue did win at Nebraska, and it was a close game at the end. Purdue had a huge lead in that game, though, if you don't remember. Purdue kind of dominated Nebraska in that game, but the game wound up going into overtime after Purdue collapsed, and then they still won. It was a good win for Purdue. But Purdue was probably better in that game than people think they were. However, maybe Nebraska will show up because they want to get some revenge here, whatever. They might have adjustments to make against Purdue. So there's kind of a lot going on in this game. But Purdue's the 7 seed in this tournament. Nebraska's the 2, I believe. So people are going to think, or are they the 3? No, yeah, they're the 2. 2 versus 7, yeah, I think. And Purdue's ranked 18th according to the rankings makers. Nebraska 11th. But if you look at KenPom, he's going to tell you that's not accurate. Purdue, he has as the 8th best team in the country. Nebraska 12. So basically Purdue is just really underrated right now because of some of their losses, losing at home a lot. But luckily for Purdue, they're not at home right now, even though they're usually almost insurmountable at home. I don't know how they've lost so many home games. All of them to really good teams, though. So, yeah, I think Purdue's an underrated team here. Like I told you, I thought they were one of the value teams to look at in this tournament. I still think they have a pretty decent chance to make the tournament final here. I think they're going to win this game against Nebraska. Now, when they did play at Nebraska, Nebraska was like a 2-point favorite, I think. So Purdue being a 3.5-point favorite on a neutral, That's a little bit high. It is. I'd lay it with Purdue anyway if I was going to play it. I considered adding this to my card. I'm not going to do it, but Nebraska hasn't played yet in the tournament. Purdue played yesterday, and they somehow didn't cover. Like, if you were on Purdue minus 13.5 in that game yesterday, you deserve a refund because they were winning that game by over 20 points for the majority of that game, I'm pretty sure. And they didn't score for the final 3 minutes of the game because they basically I think they, left the building. They're like, whatever. Here you go, Northwestern. We already won the game. And Northwestern covered by a half point at the end. It was the only point in the game where they were covering. At any point for, over half the game was that final score. It's so dumb. Purdue absolutely should have covered that. So Purdue did win. They got a decent win there yesterday. They now are acclimated to the venue. Like I keep saying, these teams that are coming into the tournament late and haven't played for a long time, like Nebraska, not as good of a thing. Now, luckily for Nebraska, they lost their second to last game to UCLA, so they're not going to really have a huge momentum disruption here, but they've been off for a while. They got revenge against Iowa to finish the season, who was one of their rivals, so they could be in a letdown spot potentially after that. Although, really, I mean, I don't know if you're going to have a letdown spot when you're playing against another good team in the conference tournament, but, it is something to consider here. Yeah, so I do like Purdue in that game. I would lay it with Purdue if I was going to play that one. As I, talked about when I broke down this bracket, I said Purdue was going to beat Nebraska in this game, and sure enough, they are favored, and they're taking the money with 53% of the tickets on Nebraska, 76% of the cash on Purdue. Yeah, the glass courts are horrible. When teams, have to get adjusted to it, that exacerbates the adjustment angle there. Houston, I wouldn't imagine that Houston would be as affected by it. I guess aside from the slipping, but Houston doesn't really. I guess they do take more threes than you expect them to, but I don't know. They're still kind of one of those slow-paced defensive teams where they shouldn't really be as affected by that. But I don't know. That court is horrible. The Big 12 needs to get rid of that shit. The final Big 10 game, I'm going against the market with this one, man. This is my final best bet. We have 2 on the day, and this is the last one. And because I'm doing conference by conference, here you go. I know, dude, we're going to take UCLA plus the points against Michigan State. That's what we're doing here. I know Michigan State right now. Maybe we'll see the market shift here. They're a 6-point favorite right now. You might be, so you can probably get 6 instead of 5.5 on this. You probably don't even need to play it right now. I don't know where the market's really going to go on this one. It's possible it goes up, I guess. Right now, it looks like the money's coming in on Michigan State, but I think that maybe this is a fake move. I don't know, because when I handicap this, I'm like, this looks like a really good spot to play UCLA. 59% of tickets, 88% of the cash on Michigan State. Michigan State's ranked 8th in the country. And first of all, you look at this line, you got to think this line looks really short, right? Why is Michigan State only laying 5.5 here? UCLA, I know the knock on them is that they can't win outside of the Pacific time zone. I get it. I've been saying that. They did win yesterday, though. So they beat Rutgers. I know that's not that impressive. Rutgers is bad. But the good thing for UCLA is they got adjusted to the venue. They played yesterday. So now they're acclimated to the venue, whereas Michigan State has not played yet in this tournament. And I'm going to repeat myself a lot here, but Michigan State has to get adjusted to the venue, so they're going to be at a disadvantage. And the way they ended the season, I think, is going to possibly hang them over here because they lost a 5-game win streak in a game against Michigan, and they were in that game, dude. They were down 2 points with 3 minutes to go. I know they lost by 10, but they were right in that game until the 3-minute mark in that game. Huge rivalry game. Michigan State went all out in that game. That was the last time they played. Now, I know they have time to kind of recover from that, but sometimes that hangover effect is still going to be there, man, like it was with Ohio yesterday. I think it might be the same thing here. And do you really think Michigan State's going to see, we get UCLA here? Are they really going to pay that much attention when the last time they saw UCLA, the only time this year, I think, they beat UCLA 82-59 when they played them in Michigan State this year? Do you think they're really going to, be scared of UCLA? Do you think they're going to take them seriously? I don't think so, man. And UCLA, they've been playing a lot better, like, down the stretch. You know, like I said, like, they got Sky Clark back. They started to coalesce a bit more. So UCLA's been playing a lot better. And by the way, Clark did not play in this game against Michigan State the first time. And they do have him now, I'm pretty sure. So it's definitely a difference. He's a difference maker for UCLA. So, of course, he did play yesterday. He didn't do well either, though. He only scored 5 points, but he's a difference maker in a lot of different ways on the court. So I think that is a difference. But also, if you look at that game against Michigan State the first time, UCLA shot horribly in the game. They actually had more field goal attempts than Michigan State did in the game, but they only hit 37% of their shots. Michigan State was 52% from three, which is not something you usually see. They were plus 18 points from three-point range. So a lot of this stuff skewed the game. And yes, Michigan State did dominate the rebound battle, so that could be an issue for UCLA. But other than that, this was a misleading final score, man. Yeah, Michigan State outplayed them and won the game, but the result should not have been as lopsided as it was. So all those things to consider, man. That game wasn't really what it looked like. There's a reason why Michigan State is only laying 5.5 here. And if we look at Mr. Pomeroy here, KenPom, he does have UCLA almost in the top 25. Now, they're fairly balanced, although, yes, I know Michigan State is the way better defense. That's true, but UCLA is the better offense. I usually like defense, but we're talking about the better defense slow-down team here. Both teams are slow-down teams, but we're talking about a slow-down game plus the better defense is laying points. That's not something that I really like, man. So if you get a slow battle here, that means the points are going to be more at a premium, so taking the points makes more sense. Michigan State is, in the luck index, I was going to say they're luckier. They are, but only by one luck spot. According to KenPom, both teams are a little bit lucky. But I think the game's going to be at a slower pace, man. I think UCLA, they really have played better down the stretch recently. So, yeah, unfortunately for UCLA, they're going to be like an 8 or 9 seed in the tournament. So I don't think they're going to beat one of those 1 seeds. But they're better than people think they are right now. So we're going to take the points with UCLA in that one. And those are my only 2 plays of the day. Hopefully we can get back, man, because we're now 4-7 in the conference tournament action. I know that's bad, but it's a lot better than the 1-7 that we were going into yesterday. So starting to see things maybe a little bit better as the conference tournaments go on. And the fact that we are not, dealing with some of these smaller conference tournaments as much. All right, let's keep going, man. This is taking forever. 12:30 is when the Conference USA starts here. Conference USA is doing a weird thing where they stagger their games. So basically, they were trying to give the 1 and 2 seeds like a bye yesterday, and instead they wound up giving the bye to the 9 seed and the 2 seed because Missouri State upset Liberty. So now Missouri State has the extra rest. They didn't play yesterday, but they did play 2 games prior to that. So they had to beat FIU in the first round, and then they beat Liberty. So Missouri State is coming off a big win over Liberty. They're kind of unfamiliar with this conference tournament, although, because they're new to this conference, but now they're probably adjusted to it now that they've played 2 games in a row. But beating Liberty was big, man. You knock off the team that's been the best team in the conference, you might have a little bit of a letdown after that. Now, they played 2 really close games against Louisiana Tech this year. Louisiana Tech won both games, but Louisiana Tech only won by 1 at Missouri State and by 2 at Louisiana Tech. So those games were as close as they could pretty much be. So, yeah, I mean, this is a game that's going to be a little bit, I think, hard to predict. Although Missouri State, again, I think coming off a game against Liberty where you upset the number 1 seed, I think it's a little bit difficult, man. I know you're in the semifinals now, and you didn't expect to be here if you're Missouri State. Now you're just free-rolling. But you're going up against one of the best defenses in the conference in Louisiana Tech. And, yeah, I thought Middle Tennessee would win yesterday with their balance, but that did not happen. Louisiana Tech got the win yesterday. So they played yesterday, but that was the only time they played in the tournament so far. So they got a game under their belt in the tournament. So I don't think that it's that much of a disadvantage, the fact that they played yesterday and Missouri State didn't. You know what I mean? Both teams are adjusted to the venue. If you're Louisiana Tech, you're not tired after playing one game in the tournament, I don't think. I think Louisiana Tech probably gets the job done here, man. It's not one that I want to play or anything. The money is coming in on Louisiana Tech, though, despite the fact that they played yesterday. They're a 1-point favorite, 55% of the tickets, 94% of the cash on them. I'll agree with it. I mean, I think in a game like this, it's going to come down to who's the better team, who's the better defense. That is La Tech, so we'll go with that as far as my opinion in the game, but not a strong opinion from me. Then the other game in the Conference USA is I already talked about what I was going to say. Did I forget to talk about what those teams did against each other? I already did. The other game in the conference tournament is Kennesaw State and Sam Houston. Kennesaw State beat Western Kentucky yesterday. So they played yesterday. Sam Houston got the day off, and Sam Houston is the better team here. Now, Kennesaw, that was the only time they played in the conference tournament so far. This tournament, by the way, is in Huntsville, Alabama, for those who don't remember, which, I don't think the location at this point is really much of an advantage to any of these teams. Kennesaw is in Georgia, by the way. They got the win yesterday. They played yesterday, but they hadn't played for a while before that. So, again, I don't think they're going to be, tired or anything like that. Sam Houston, who I think is maybe the best team in this conference, power ratings-wise. I think they're actually ahead of Liberty, according to KenPom. Sam Houston won a game in the tournament already, I believe, and then they had a day off. They beat New Mexico State in a 2-10 game 2 days ago, and then they had yesterday off. So they got acclimated to the venue, had a day off. I think in this case, I would probably lean to Sam Houston in this one. The money's coming in the other direction, though, towards Kennesaw. Sam Houston's down from 5.5 to 4 here. 60% of the tickets are on Sam Houston. 95% of the cash on Kennesaw, though. The money is saying Kennesaw. I don't really see it here, though. I don't know, man. Obviously, this is not a game I want to touch, but I don't know. I mean, I'm giving you all the information there, so that's that. I mean, it seems like it should be La Tech versus Sam Houston in the final. But we'll see, man. You could wind up having a crazy result in this conference, man. Maybe La Tech wins it, which would downgrade the tournament field further. I think if Sam Houston gets into the NCAA tournament, I think they'll be an interesting team in that tournament because they're almost like a top 100 team in KenPom. They might actually be that now. They're almost. They're not quite there, but yeah, we'll see, man. But yeah, hopefully, if you want the tournament to be, as strong as it can be. I mean, you're already out of luck with that because of some of the teams that aren't in it, but you'd probably want to root for Sam Houston to win this conference. All right. The next conference up is the SEC starting at 1 p.m. Kentucky and Florida. Florida enters the fray here as they haven't played yet in the tournament. Kentucky had to play on the opening day, so they've actually played 2 days in a row. They beat LSU and didn't look very good in doing so. Then they actually won and covered yesterday. Now, Kentucky, they were ahead for most of that game yesterday against Missouri, and late in the game, they almost lost the game. And I told you I liked Kentucky in that game yesterday. They did wind up covering. Kentucky had a stranglehold on that game. They were winning that game most of the game, and then it got a bit close for comfort at the end, but Kentucky did wind up getting out of it with the win. Now they're playing Florida, and they actually played pretty well against Florida when they played them this year. They lost by 9 at Florida, and they lost by 7 at home. Now, in the Todd Golden Florida era, coming into this year, Kentucky was 4-0 straight up against them, believe it or not, although they're 0-2 against them this year. But this Kentucky team, they've been able to play well against Florida for whatever reason. Florida has not played yet in the tournament. Kentucky is used to the venue. So there is all that. Florida is trying to maintain a 1 seed, though, so they do have motivation. They don't have momentum, which is what I'm about to talk about. I think their momentum is going to be stalled out. They do have motivation here if they want to try to get the 1 seed, right? Because I think if Florida loses here and if UConn rolls through their conference tournament there, which St. John's is still alive in that conference, so we'll see what happens there. But Florida could potentially still drop back to a 2 seed, which they probably don't want. because right now, but the way the 1 seeds are setting up right now, it looks like if Florida is the 4th 1 seed, they'll actually still get the South region because the other teams are going to pick the most advantageous region to them, and it will leave Florida with their most advantageous region too. Well, sort of, the South. I mean, it's going to be in Houston, the regional, so it's not great for Florida, but still. But Florida, I think they're going to come in with their momentum having stalled out, man, because they finished the season one of the hottest teams in the country. They won a ton of games in a row at the end of the season, probably double-digit wins in a row to end the season. They were just running through the SEC. And in their final game, by the way, they beat Kentucky. So the last time Florida played, they were winning the game at Kentucky. So there are a few things here that I do like about Kentucky here, man. I know Kentucky's playing a 3rd game in 3 days, but I still think they're at the advantage because they played in this tournament already. This whole tournament is being played in, where the hell is it again? Nashville, I think, right? Yeah. So Kentucky actually has a pretty big crowd, I think. I didn't really watch that much of the Missouri game yesterday, but Kentucky, their fans usually show up in Nashville, man, because it's so close to Kentucky. So I think they will have a huge fan base at this game. Florida will have a big one as well, but, you know, they're further away, of course. Florida, last time they played was against Kentucky. They were beating Kentucky, so there might be a little bit of an adjustment angle to look at for Kentucky here where they might fix some things, play better this time. And again, because Florida hasn't played for like a week after they had this run, that could stall out their momentum, man. Like when you're playing really well like this, you don't want to have time off. So I would lean to Kentucky in this game, plus the points. Florida looks like they are taking some of the money right now. They're an 11.5-point favorite. 63% of tickets and 76% of the cash on Florida. Now, if I remember correctly, I thought Florida was only about 9.5 at home against Kentucky. So if they're 11.5, that seems a little crazy. No, they were 12.5. So, but still, if they're 12.5 at home and they're 11.5 now on a neutral, that does still seem high. That number seems high. It looks like the money is coming in on Florida a little bit for now, but I don't agree with it. I would take Kentucky plus the points in that one if I was going to play it. And, of course, Florida did not beat Kentucky by that amount either time they played them, even though they won both games. All right, SEC, the second game up is Tennessee and Vandy, the Battle of Tennessee in Nashville, which, of course, the ESPN, whatever, I was trying to think of a word for it. The TV people, the TV networks get exactly what they want here. I'm pissed because I wanted Auburn to really give the committee something to think about with that bubble there with Miami, Ohio losing bad yesterday, taking a bad loss, and with Auburn having a way more difficult schedule. Auburn had Tennessee on the ropes yesterday, dude. Auburn was winning more than half of that game, and then they completely fell apart. Auburn was winning the game by 10 with like 10 minutes to go, and they wound up losing by 10. Dude, I don't know what happened in that game. Tennessee went on like an 18-0 run or something in that game, which you don't usually see out of a team that is not that good on the offensive side like Tennessee. But now, Tennessee, they basically got a scare yesterday against Auburn. They got a game under their belt, and the last time they played prior to that, they lost to Vandy at home. So I kind of like Tennessee in this game, man. They already played, you know. They lost to Vandy at the end of the season, which was revenge for Vandy because Tennessee won at Vandy earlier this year. Both games were close, that's for sure. Tennessee won by 4 at Vandy. Vandy won by 4 at Tennessee. But now I think if the zigzag continues, I think that indicates that Tennessee will be the side to look at in this one. Again, Tennessee played yesterday. They didn't look that great, so they're accustomed to the venue now. Vandy has not played since the end of the season, so literally the last time they played, they were winning at Tennessee, and they haven't played since then. So now they could get zigzagged here, man. Tennessee might have the adjustments to make on that, and, you know, that's the last thing in Vandy's mind was a huge revenge win over their rival, who they now have to play again. I like Tennessee in this one. Vandy has flipped to a 1-point favorite here, but 62% of tickets, 85% of the cash on Tennessee. And when it comes down to it, even though I do think KenPom has Vandy 1 ranking spot higher, he does. He has Vandy 13 and Tennessee 14. Tennessee very, very under the radar, man. Both of these teams are actually underrated, so keep that in mind for tournament purposes, perhaps. Both these teams ranked in the 20s. Tennessee is a very underrated team, though, I believe, especially because their defense is quite good. So keep that in mind, because come tournament time, they're probably going to be like a 6 seed or something like that. And I think they're going to be a team that, I might be looking to pick in brackets and stuff like that. To do, some damage. Although, because it's Rick Barnes, I'm not going to take them to the Final Four or anything like that. But, yeah, the money looks like it's coming in at Tennessee. Tennessee is the better defense. They're 14th defensively in the country, according to KenPom. Vandy 28th. But Vandy is a top 10 offense, 10th in offense. Tennessee 36th. Tennessee likes to slow the game down. So this is more of the typical matchup that you tend to see with the stylistic differences, where Vandy's kind of the typical fast-paced team that's better on offense, although they're not bad on defense either. Tennessee, the typical defensive slow-paced team, although they're not horrible on offense. And Tennessee has been the much unluckier team this year as well. They're 200 ranking spots lower almost in luck, according to KenPom. So he is telling you they've underperformed, whereas Vandy's kind of overperformed. All right. Continuing the SEC, Ole Miss, the shock of the tournament so far, is playing Alabama. Now, Ole Miss, they're playing a third game in 3 days, and they're coming off 2 upsets of Texas and Georgia. Nobody expected that. I mean, I did think they would cover against Texas, because Texas was one of those bubble teams, and they're all overrated come conference tournament time. Did I think Ole Miss was going to beat Georgia? No. Although they did have the advantage of having played in the tournament, and Georgia had not played yet. Now, what's interesting about this is Georgia is a very similar style of team to Alabama, right? They both play fast, and they both aren't that good on defense, and they're both offensive juggernauts, basically, although Alabama is really, really good on offense. And they're probably not even as bad on defense as Georgia is. So, yeah, Alabama's the better team overall. But they profile as a very similar team to Georgia. But now, Ole Miss, that does mean that they've seen that style, right? So, Ole Miss has actually done well against these teams. I think it seems like Ole Miss matches up okay against these teams that are good on offense and not good on defense, which Texas, that applies to them as well. Even though I think Texas is a slow-paced team. They are, but they're much better on offense than defense as well. Which, by the way, I think Texas should make the tournament. Right now, I think they still will, although they might get sent to Dayton. We'll see. I got to do my bracketology, man. But so much of the bubble has really, really hurt themselves, and Texas was already in a position ahead of most of those teams. And if they all lose, then Texas basically has to remain ahead of them. So we'll see. But Oklahoma is putting some of those teams in danger, though, which I'm going to talk about them in a minute. So these night games in the SEC are actually really interesting. Now, Ole Miss, they slow the game way down, man, and they're still well coached. They're not a good team this year, but they slow the game down to try to make up for their physical limitations, let's say, because they're not as physically talented as some of these other teams are. They're still well coached with Chris Beard there. They're making a run in this tournament. I actually think they could cover this game against Alabama. I don't really think they're going to win, but Alabama, they're a team that definitely relies on offensive timing and stuff like that, and they haven't played in quite a while. So they're coming into this tournament cold, and I know Ole Miss is playing 3 games in a row here, back-to-back upsets, but I think they might cover again here, man. They did play Alabama. They lost at home by 19 to Alabama, which I think might have been the only time they played them this year. I believe it is. Maybe I'm missing the other one, but yeah, I think they only played them that one time. So Alabama might not take Ole Miss that seriously still. Yes, Alabama will be the best team they've faced in the tournament so far. But Alabama also finished the season pretty hot, although I guess maybe it's a good thing they lost to Georgia in there to break up their win streak, because they would have had a really long win streak to finish the season. But they still finished the season winning almost all their recent games, and they beat their rival Auburn to sweep the season series to finish the season. So that's pretty satisfying. And that was the last game they played. So I think they might come into this a little bit cold, man. So I like Ole Miss in this one, man. Alabama's 11.5-point favorite, 75% of the tickets on them, 68% of the cash on Ole Miss. Ole Miss is going to try to slow the game down. I think this is a game where the total is correlated to the side here. I think if you think Alabama's going to cover, it's probably going to go over. If you think Mississippi is going to cover, it's probably going to go under. The total is pretty high in the 160s because you can't really, you can't put an Alabama total really that much lower than that usually, unless they're up against a real defensive juggernaut, which Ole Miss is not, but they do play slow. Ole Miss is actually, I believe they're actually the better defense in this game, believe it or not. They're 48th in defense, according to KenPom. And they're almost a top 100 offense. So this Ole Miss team, I mean, they're not a terrible team. Alabama is 68th on defense, but they're pretty much elite on offense at third. But Ole Miss is actually the better defense, technically, getting points here. So, that's another thing, that should be considered as far as leaning towards Ole Miss here. So, those are my thoughts on that one. All right. Continuing on here. What else do we have here? I thought there was something else. I don't know. I had something else in mind that I was going to say here, but maybe, I don't know. I can't remember exactly what else I was going to say. I think that's about it. I mean, again, you know me. I'm going to have a tendency to fade the teams that haven't played in the tournament yet. And Arkansas is also one of those teams. Oklahoma is playing against Arkansas. Oklahoma, they're making a run towards the bubble here, man, because the bubble has been playing horribly, and Oklahoma has had some good wins recently. This Oklahoma team, they're on the bubble right now, man. They've won 6 games in a row. They might play their way into the tournament. They had a couple of nice wins at the end of the season against other bubble team Auburn, which does piss me off. They beat Missouri, who I think Missouri's going to be in the tournament. I don't think they're going to get knocked out because they lost to Kentucky, I think Missouri's in. They've done enough, especially with how bad the bubble's been. Again, I think Texas is probably still going to get in as well, but it might be a Dayton game for the second year in a row because Oklahoma beat them too. Now, Oklahoma is playing a third game in 3 days as well in this tournament. Fewer people are talking about them, though, because Ole Miss is a little bit more of a surprising run than Oklahoma is here. Oklahoma beat South Carolina, no surprise there. They were actually losing, I think, at halftime in that game. Then Oklahoma turned it on, and they basically blew out Texas A&M yesterday. Now, I think A&M is still going to get in as well. A&M, similar to Oklahoma last year, A&M was really hot in the first half of the season. Then they cooled way off in the second half, but Oklahoma did the same thing last year, and they still got into the tournament. I think A&M is still going to get in. Oklahoma, they beat A&M. Plus, A&M was leading the SEC for half the season. Even though I told you they weren't as good as people thought they were. They played buckyball, which is, not necessarily a recipe for success with that's their new coach this year. But they played just a fast style that you're not used to seeing Texas A&M play. And, they might not totally have the personnel entirely for sustaining that, but Oklahoma got the win yesterday. Easy win. They're accustomed to the venue. Now they get to play another fast team. Oh, I think the other thing I was going to say, with both Ole Miss and Oklahoma here now, they're both playing fast-paced teams in 2 straight games. Now, you might argue that will tire that team out a little bit. This team might get tired after, having to play 3 straight games, 2 games in a row against a fast-paced team. But at least they're used to playing a fast-paced team, so they're just continuing doing that, But I guess what you could make the argument that you should look at these teams in the first half. Mississippi to cover in the first half, Oklahoma to cover in the first half. That makes sense to me as well, because if those teams are going to get tired, it's going to happen later in the game, right? You know what I mean? And if Alabama and Arkansas, they're probably going to be at their coldest in the beginning of these games, you know what I mean? Because they have to shed the rust. So that makes a lot of sense to me, too, to look towards Ole Miss and Oklahoma, plus the points in the first half of these games. Now, Oklahoma, yes, they have the advantage of having played already in those 2 games. Getting adjusted to the venue, I should say. Oklahoma is also going to be an underdog who is on the bubble now. So, I don't like playing these bubble teams in the tournament when they're a favorite, because usually they're overvalued, the pressure's on them, whatever. But when they're an underdog and you're at least going to get effort out of them, I do tend to like that. Arkansas, they're a good team, but again, they're coming into this a little bit cold. They finished the season decently with 4 wins in their last 5 games, but again, they could be cold now because they haven't played for a while. Their last game was that crazy overtime game against Missouri, where they got the win in their sort of rivalry game, if you want to call it that, against Missouri on the road there. I do lean to Oklahoma in this game, though. Arkansas going to have to get adjusted to the venue here. 52% of the tickets are on Arkansas. They're a 6.5-point favorite. 68% of the cash on Oklahoma. So those are my thoughts on that tournament there. The SEC. Again, Ole Miss and Oklahoma first half might make a lot of sense in those games as well. Okay. Although I'm not really, I'm just not a first half type of guy, but we'll see. Okay. Let's see here. We're going to have Conference USA and then SWAC. And then I still haven't, the Big East, I guess the Big East doesn't play until the night. I don't know, man. All right, we're at almost the hour mark as usual. I'm gonna take a little bit of a break, and then I'm gonna come back and talk about the rest of these. I'll do that, and then I'll come back. Yeah, and I'll talk about the rest of this because I think probably about half of the college basketball is left, and then hockey's gonna be quick, and there's not that much NBA either, and I'm not giving out any more plays. But hang out if you want my opinions on the rest of this stuff. I'll be back in a second. Yep. Inside, I want to kill myself. We are on an 0-7 run over the last 2 days. After tonight was just complete bullshit. So that's how I'm going to start off this show. Horrible Sunday, 1-5. I don't even know what to tell you about that. I just don't want to do this anymore. I have never seen anything like this, man. With the slump continuing, 2 straight losses, not a good day at all. 0-4. I just have not had a good season, man. What kind of slump that I'm on? The slump continues. I've reached a new peak, actually. I'm going to burn my Bruins hat, man. I don't know what is going on with the Bruins. March 8th, is that what it is? I don't even know. It's March 9th, I think. Who even knows, man? I don't know what day it is anymore. I don't even know what day it is anymore, man. Back with you after the worst day that I could possibly have. Back with you, as I always am. Until I die, at least. 0-2 yesterday. And yesterday did not go well for me. 0-5. The worst month that I've ever had in my 18 years doing this. I don't know what to even tell you about this anymore. Broke the slump yesterday as the slump discontinues. The slump continues. Somebody fucking kill me, please. I don't even know what I should do at this point other than potentially end it all. All right, one other thing I will say about Oklahoma is they actually play slow this year too, so they might be able to muddy that game up against Arkansas and slow the game down. Now, again, the total's really high. That one, same thing as Ole Miss, Alabama, man. I think the side and total are correlated in that one too. Like, if you think Arkansas is going to cover, it's probably going over. And if you think Oklahoma is going to cover, it's probably going under. So, similar situation in that game. Okay. And that total is even higher than the Alabama one, believe it or not, in the 160s. Probably because Ole Miss is offensively challenged more so than Oklahoma is. Oklahoma's worked their way up to 41st in KenPom, by the way. And they're actually a really good offense. Just their defense is actually outside the top 100, even though they play slow. So Oklahoma, very, very similar profile to Texas, which is really bizarre. The Red River rivals are like very similar teams there profile-wise. All right. Conference USA, I think, only has 2 games because they do that wide-ass bracket thing. So Charlotte is playing UAB. These games are in Birmingham, so UAB is playing in their home city. So they do have a little bit of a location advantage here. Now, Charlotte has an advantage of having played yesterday. They beat Tulane. I told you Tulane's overrated, man. So Charlotte has the advantage of having played a game in the tournament now, so they're adjusted to the venue. UAB coming into this game not having played since the end of the regular season, so UAB has, extra time off. It might actually hurt them again because you could be a little bit rusty. These teams, I believe, played once during the regular season. Let me see. Where is that game? Oh, yeah, it was really close to the end of the season. UAB went into Charlotte and beat them at the end of the season there. Now, I don't think Charlotte's a very good team. I do think UAB is the better team here. But based on the situation, I think I would probably lean towards Charlotte in this one because they played a game already. Although this game is in Birmingham, I know. UAB up from 4-5. The money is coming in on UAB, though. I don't really agree with it. 62% of tickets, 99% of the cash on UAB. Yeah, I'd probably lean towards fading them, though. And UAB is the 4 seed, by the way, in this tournament. Charlotte, I think they're the 4. I think Charlotte, I guess, is the 5. I don't even know, man. And then the 3 seed, who's actually probably the second best team and close to the best team in this conference, Tulsa, is playing in the other game against North Texas. This is an interesting one, man. I think this is a stylistic mismatch here. Well, not mismatch, but collision, if you want to call it. I don't know. Tulsa plays a bit fast, and North Texas is unbelievably slow. So we got to keep all that in mind here. Although they actually probably aren't quite as slow as they were under their previous coach, who's now at West Virginia. North Texas won yesterday against FAU, so they have a game under their belt in this tournament. So that might give them a little bit of an edge here. When they played Tulsa during the regular season, they only played once. I think they lost by 16 at Tulsa. Tulsa is definitely the better team. There's no question about that. But North Texas, having already played yesterday in this venue, getting acclimated to it, whatever, and being able to slow the game way down, they have the ability to maybe frustrate Tulsa here, man. Tulsa finished the season hot, too, with 5 wins in a row to finish the season. So, again, having time off doesn't help that. Like, it could break your momentum a little bit here. So, I would probably kind of lean to North Texas in this one, plus the points. Tulsa's an 8-point favorite. 56% of tickets, 88% of the cash on Tulsa. So, the money is coming into Tulsa, and, just for rooting for the best teams to make the NCAAA tournament, we want either South Florida or Tulsa to win this conference to get into the tournament. Preferably, I would say probably South Florida. The thing about Tulsa is they're pretty lopsided. They're really good on offense, and they're not very good on defense. So that's how they profile. South Florida is a much more balanced team. I think a more interesting team where they go really fast and they try to turn you over and beat you in transition. South Florida could be a difficult opponent for somebody in that first round there. Tulsa, I think, would be a little bit less so. So we'll see what happens. South Florida is not going to play at all until tomorrow. So we'll see what happens in that tournament, man. Okay, but they're close in KenPom rankings. So Tulsa was, really hot at the beginning of the season. All right, the next conference up is the SWAC, where a lot of chaos is happening in the SWAC. The 1 seed is gone, Bethune-Cookman. Bethune-Cookman had some decent out-of-conference games, but the team that beat them, Prairie View, is playing today, and they had yesterday off because, again, this is a similar setup to Conference USA where they tried to give the 1 and 2 seeds a day off in the middle of the tournament, and they wound up giving Prairie View the day off because they upset Bethune-Cookman. Prairie View now coming in playing Alabama A&M here. These teams, I think, only played once during the regular season at Prairie View, and Alabama A&M won the game by 20. Prairie View, I don't know how good they really are, man. I'm not really a SWAC follower. I can tell you that Alabama A&M beat Texas Southern yesterday, so they played yesterday. So Alabama A&M doesn't have any days off, but they didn't play in the tournament until yesterday, so I don't think they're going to be, tired yet, even though they played yesterday. Prairie View is coming off knocking out the 1 seed, which is, a pretty big deal when you beat the best team in your conference. Now, Alabama A&M, the money's actually coming in on, Prairie View dropped from a 1.5-point favorite to a pick 'em, which is interesting that Prairie View according to the market, is actually considered to be the slightly better team here. 64% of tickets, 75% of the cash on Prairie View. So the money is saying Prairie View. I don't know if I like that. I mean, some of it might be because they had yesterday off and Alabama A&M didn't, because I don't think Prairie View is the better team, but I can get some things wrong in this conference. KenPom has Alabama A&M 5 ranking spots higher. He has Prairie View outside the top 300 and Alabama A&M inside the top 300. Oh, my God. So I don't know, man. Prairie View is the better defense, though, and that is something I like to look at. Alabama A&M is the better offense. I do like defense. I like the better defense. Prairie View plays fast, but they're the better defense. I don't know, man. Alabama A&M plays slow, but they're the worst defense. Very, very strange stylistic matchup here. And Alabama A&M is lucky, according to KenPom. So, I guess I would agree with the market in that and agree with Prairie View, but yeah, I don't have a great read on that. And then the other game in the SWAC is the 3 versus the 2, I believe, Southern and Florida A&M. But I'm telling you, I think Southern is the second best team in this conference behind the now dead Bethune-Cookman, who is the best team in the conference, and they're not going to make the tournament, although it doesn't really matter when whoever wins this conference is going to be playing in Dayton, most likely, trying to play into a 16 seed, so whatever. But Southern is the best team remaining in the conference. Florida A&M is a little bit of a false 2 seed. Now, Southern, I believe they played yesterday. They played yesterday. I think they beat Arkansas Pine Bluff. So that was the first win that they had in this tournament. So they've played. All these teams are adjusted to the venue now. All these games are being played in Atlanta. Southern lost on their home floor to Florida A&M the last time they played them. So they might make some adjustments, man, because Southern was definitely probably like a 5.5-point favorite in this game. I'm way off. They're 8.5. So Southern lost as a big favorite against Florida A&M already at home. So they're probably going to make adjustments to that. They're going to remember that. And I thought that they played twice this year, but maybe they did. Oh, yeah, they did. They played way early in the season. Southern actually lost both games. They lost at Florida A&M, but they're the better team, man. So even though they played yesterday and Florida A&M didn't, you got double revenge from the better team. And that is, I told you, that's a good way to look when a team is actually the better team and they lost both games during the regular season and they match up in the conference tournament. That's the way you want to look, in my opinion. And, the trends bear that out, too. Florida A&M won 2 days ago in this tournament against Jackson State. So they did play in the tournament, but, they weren't really tested yet in the tournament. Not that, facing Arkansas Pine Bluff is that much of a test either, but I would lean to Southern here. They're minus 2.5, 50% of the tickets, 94% of the cash on them. Yeah, that's how I would lean in that game. Okay, we have already talked about all these tournaments here. The MEAC not playing in the morning today. The MEAC starts later in the evening. Did I skip anything? I hope I didn't. I don't think I did. UMass, who pulled off the upset against Miami, Ohio, is now playing Toledo in an 8 versus 4, I think is what this is. Now, UMass, yeah, they could be in a letdown spot after that. I know this is a conference tournament, but when you come in having no expectations to win the tournament and you basically, I think UMass basically accomplished their goal by knocking off the undefeated Miami, Ohio. That was huge, man. So I think they could be in a letdown spot here, even though this is the tournament. Toledo did play slightly later than they did yesterday, but yeah, UMass also beat Toledo at UMass. I think the only time they played this year, they beat them by 2. So maybe Toledo will have some adjustments to make here. Toledo is the better of these two teams. Not by a whole lot, but Toledo also, they were better in that game against Bowling Green than it looked. I thought Bowling Green would be better in that game because I like their defense, and they almost won. Toledo was winning that whole game, dude, and then Bowling Green somehow came back, even though a defensive team that doesn't play good offense, like Bowling Green, usually they're not equipped to come back, but Toledo's defense isn't that good. So Bowling Green came back in this game, but Toledo did lead for 81% of it, so the final score is kind of misleading, where it makes it look like it was close, but it wasn't really. Bowling Green went to the line way more. Both teams are horrible from the free throw line. But Toledo was the better team in that game. I think I would lay it with Toledo in this one against UMass. The money is coming in that way. Now, they're a 3-point favorite, 68% of the tickets, 99% of the cash on them. Probably not accurate, but I would agree with the Toledo side there. And then the other game is the rivalry game that the MAC probably wanted between Kent State and Akron. Round 3. Akron, of course, won both games during the regular season because their only conference loss was to Miami, Ohio. Akron, as I've been saying all year, I think they're the best team in this conference. They're the highest power-rated team. Akron being overlooked because everybody's talking about Miami, Ohio. Akron is a very good team, though. They're like probably around top 60 in KenPom. They're better than Kent State. Now, both teams played yesterday. Kent State got that nice win where they pulled away from Ohio. We got the win on that yesterday. But for Akron, they got a scare yesterday, man. And you know what I'm about to say. When you have a really good team like Akron and they were a huge favorite and they got a scare like Akron did yesterday, they barely got by Buffalo in the end. I like them to bounce back in the next game, and I like them to give a better effort in the next game. Now, Akron, they were blowing Buffalo out of the building, dude. They were winning this game by like 20 points, I think, in the second half at one point or close to it. They had a double-digit lead for most of the rest of the game, and then I don't know what happened, but they only scored 2 points in the final 4 minutes of the game. They went on like a 3-minute stretch where they didn't score any points, and Buffalo got back to within 1 point in the game, which is insane. And then so Akron got a real scare yesterday as a huge favorite, double-digit favorite. So again, a team that gets a scare like that, I think they turn it on and they give you a much better effort in the next game. I like Akron in this game. They're a 7-point favorite. I would lean towards laying it in this one. 70% of the tickets, 96% of the cash on them. So that is my opinion on that game in the MAC. And yeah, at this point, I think Akron will win the tournament. And I think if you played Akron on the futures market to win the tournament, which I think was my recommendation, you know, if I gave any in the MAC, you're in good shape because Miami, Ohio's gone. So, you know, this is going to be the most difficult game remaining for Akron, I think. Kent State, these two teams really don't like each other, but Akron did handle them both times this year. And they are the better team in this case. And then, you know, they'll match up against probably Toledo in the final if everything goes according to plan, although, of course, not everything does all the time. All right, so that's that game. The Big East doesn't start until the evening, so we do have some Big East action here. All the teams in the Big East have already played now. Seton Hall is playing St. John's now. This is a huge game for Seton Hall, dude. I was worried about Seton. Like, I did not think that Seton Hall was going to win that easily against Creighton yesterday. Seton Hall really good on the defensive side, but not so good on the offensive side. This is a monster game, dude, because Seton Hall, with how bad the bubble has been, if they win this game, they're probably playing themselves into the tournament if they win this game here against St. John's. And St. John's doesn't really need the game, you know. St. John's, they're already going to be in the tournament. They're going to be a 5, somewhere in that range, even if they lose this game. This is double revenge for Seton Hall, but Seton Hall did play St. John's pretty tough in both games. They lost by 5 at St. John's, and they lost by 7 at home to St. John's 2 games ago. Now, that might mean that St. John's will take them seriously because Seton Hall did play them tough. Seton Hall really good on the defensive side, like I said, which is good when you're an underdog, and they are an underdog here as well. Now, we got to see what was St. John's favor by at home, on the road at Seton Hall. I guess they were 5.5. I think St. John's is about 8.5 today, so that does make pretty much makes sense. St. John's, remember, they are playing in Madison Square Garden, though, which is like sort of their home arena. They're up to an 8.5-point favorite here, but I would take the points with Seton Hall here, man. St. John's had an easy game yesterday, though. They played in the tournament. They beat Providence, excuse me. They beat Providence. Connecticut beat Xavier. St. John's beat Providence. Kind of an easy win there, but kind of a big game for St. John's because Providence was the only team besides UConn that beat St. John's in conference play this year. So they probably wanted to stick it to Providence again. And, you know, there's the whole Bryce Hopkins thing there where he used to be on Providence. Now he's on St. John's, whatever. I would take the points with Seton Hall here, man. It's a very low total. They're a really good defense getting points here. they're trying to play, to make the tournament at this point. And again, bubble teams, like I said, a lot of times they're overvalued, but not when they're an underdog against a better team, man. That's when you actually want to look towards them because you're going to get an effort out of them. And I don't know how much effort St. John's is going to give you here. 75% of tickets, 77% of the cash at St. John's. I think there'll be a public side, though, for sure. So I would lean towards Seton Hall in that one, man. Plus the points. Under, there's definitely an argument for the under as well because Seton Hall, they're just not a good scoring team. They're really good on defense. St. John's, kind of similar in that their offense is bad-ish outside the top 50. They're a good defense, 15th in the country. St. John's really lucky, according to KenPom, 44th in luck. So St. John's is turning out kind of like last year, man. Like, all the knocks on St. John's last year pretty much all apply this year, too. They're the same team, basically. They're a fast-paced team. They're good on defense. They're not good enough on offense. They're lucky, according to KenPom. So, they were a team I was looking to bounce in the brackets last year. I had Texas Tech bouncing them in the Sweet 16 in my bracket last year, which worked out fine as Texas Tech, got further than that, and St. John's got bounced earlier than that. But, of course, I had Texas Tech in the Final Four, and they had Florida totally on the ropes, man, and they couldn't quite do it. Man, they were a big underdog against Florida, though. Anyway, what was I going to say here? Yeah, Seton Hall is actually the slightly better defense. They're 12th in the country. They're just not that good on offense. They're a top 50 team, according to KenPom right now. They're way less lucky than St. John's at 272. And they play slow at 302, so they might slow it down and kind of frustrate St. John's here. So, yeah, a lot of things to kind of like about Seton Hall in that game, actually, man. So I do like that one. Georgetown and UConn is the later game here. Georgetown beat Villanova last night, man. Big upset win for Georgetown there. Georgetown to make I think this is the semifinal. That's crazy, dude. Georgetown makes the semifinal in the Big East, man. What is this? The 90s? Is Patrick Ewing playing? I don't know, man. Or maybe I guess the mid 2000s. Georgetown was good with Roy Hibbert and whatever there, man. Georgetown making this run here to the semifinal. They actually, believe it or not, they played Connecticut really tough both times, too. They lost at home by 2 and on the road by 4 against UConn. So they played really well both times against UConn. UConn, of course, might remember that and take them seriously. And UConn, I think they do have motivation in this tournament because they are trying to get a 1 seed still. They're battling with Florida, basically, for that final 1 seed. Even though UConn would get sent to the South, but I don't think they care about that. Like, they want the better bracket set up, which I think would be getting the 1 seed does get a little bit of a better path there. UConn crushed Xavier last night. That game, I thought UConn would cover, man, after that bad season ending against Marquette and the fact that I think they have motivation in this tournament. I liked UConn to cover that. UConn also they handled Xavier every time they played them this year, man. None of the games were close. Xavier couldn't match up against them at all. Georgetown, though, looks like they do match up pretty well against UConn. Now, UConn, they play slow. They're a little bit better on the defensive side than the offensive side. So asking UConn to cover a large number, not exactly what you want to do. Georgetown, they got balance. They're a little bit better on defense than offense. They play slow as well. They're 76th in KenPom, which isn't great, but they're not a horrible team. Very unlucky, according to KenPom, though. In the bottom, 60 or so, whereas UConn is 62nd in luck. So there's a big luck disparity here, too. I'll lean to Georgetown plus the points in this one. UConn, 14.5-point favorite. 67% of tickets on them. 77% of tickets on them. 61% of the cash. Low total, man. It's expected to be a slow game, low and slow. And I agree with that. Both teams play slow, so that's what's going to happen. But, yeah, I think that means Georgetown can hang around again in that game against UConn, even though UConn might take them seriously this time. I'd lean towards taking the points in that one. Okay. And, I haven't talked about the Big 12 yet either. Oh, my God, another one of the big conferences. But we're almost done. We got MEAC here. The MEAC, Howard was the only team that got a bye because they have a 7-team tournament structure because Coppin State was ineligible for some reason. I don't know. Ask the NCAAA. They suck anyway, though. Howard is, like, by far the best team in this conference, though. They're on a roll. But the problem with Howard right now is I don't know if that bye is really going to help them, man, because they finished the season winning 6 games in a row, beating Norfolk State, who's, I think, probably the second best team in this conference. That's how they ended the season, and they haven't played since then. So they're the only team that hasn't played in the MEAC tournament yet, as far as the MEAC tournament is concerned. So they might have too much time off here, man, and have to shed the rust. And they're playing a bad South Carolina State team. I get it. But Morgan State, Howard actually lost to South Carolina State earlier this year on the road by 1, which is insane. But maybe you can give them a pass because that was, I think, their conference opener, so we didn't really know who these teams were yet. And then when Howard faced them late in the season, once Howard knew who they were, they absolutely drilled them by 28 points at home. So it was, a complete difference. You could make the argument Howard is a much different team now than they were in that first game against South Carolina State. South Carolina State, they pulled off the upset of Norfolk State in this tournament, which I think might have been yesterday. A very, very unexpected upset. That was yesterday. So they're playing on no rest. However, again, they did get a game under their belt in this tournament. These games were all being played in Norfolk, Virginia. So that was even crazier that they beat Norfolk at Norfolk. Now, Howard is the better team by so much that they're a 15-point favorite here. I don't think Howard's going to lose this game. I think I would be shocked if they don't win this tournament, but they got to shed the rust here, man. And I would lean to SC State plus the points, man. I would probably take the points in this one, even though I think Howard should win this game. Tickets are 50-50, cash 50-50, so nothing to really – we can't even really read into the percentages there. It's a pretty low total in the 140s. I mean, the MEAC, most of their games are going to be low scoring because these offenses blow in this conference. The other game in this conference is Delaware State and NC Central. Delaware State beat Morgan State, I think actually 2 days ago, I want to say, because these games have been staggered. Yeah, that was an overtime when they knocked out the 2 seed, who I think was a bit of a fraud, Morgan State. Now they're playing NC Central. They lost both games during the regular season to NC Central by 9 on the road and by 14 at home. NC Central is the better team, though, so I don't know. Maybe Delaware State will make some adjustments to that, though. For NC Central, I believe they played yesterday. They did, so they have a rest disadvantage. They had to play into overtime yesterday to get by Maryland Eastern Shore, who I thought might win that game. Money is coming in on NC Central. It looks like they are the better team here. 4.5 is the number. 75% of tickets, 89% of the cash on them. I don't know, man. I actually kind of lean towards Delaware State plus the points because NC Central did have to go up against a decent defense yesterday, and Delaware State does have the day off, did have the day off yesterday at least. In this case, I think that might actually help them a little bit. All these teams except Howard have already played in this venue for now. So, yeah, I would probably lean towards taking the points in that one, as weird as that one sounds. All right, and then we have the Big 12, which is playing only at night now because I think the Big 12 are in the semifinals now. So these are going to be interesting games, man. We have all the best teams in the Big 12 are still alive. The top 4 teams pretty much. Unfortunately for Texas Tech, I think they have fallen behind Kansas as far as ranking, whatever now, because Texas Tech, they're not the same team without JT Toppin, man. The first game is really, really good with Iowa State and Arizona. And I told you when I did my bracket breakdown, I thought Iowa State could potentially win this game. And I still think that. Now, they beat Texas Tech yesterday, which I think was pretty impressive, even though it was Texas Tech without JT Toppin. I told you I thought Iowa State would win and cover. They did, and they looked really good in doing so. This Iowa State team, they're pretty good, man. Now they're playing Arizona, but this is not an insurmountable game for Iowa State here. KenPom has them 7th in the country. He's got Arizona 3rd, and I know there is a bit of a gap here. there is clearly a top 4 this year, just like there were last year. Like, as you can see, even with KenPom's net ratings, he's got Duke, Michigan, Arizona, Florida, and then there's almost a 3-point net rating drop off to the next team, Illinois. So there is a significant gap between these top 4 and everybody else. And as far as net ratings goes, these are some of the highest net ratings we've ever seen, especially Duke and Michigan. There's almost a 2-point drop off even after them, which is insane. And then a 2-point drop off from Arizona to Florida too. So something to consider in the brackets too. Like, I think we almost have to take either Duke or Michigan to win our brackets, even though I think the public is probably going to be taking those 2 teams as well. But it might be a situation where the public is split between those teams, and you just, you got to pick the one that's not being picked as much, or pick the right one, basically. Just hope to get it right. Anyway, I think Iowa State can make this thing competitive, man. They lost at Arizona by 16 the last time they played, which I think was the only time they played this year. So they might be able to make some adjustments off of that. I don't think they're as bad as that showing was. Arizona is definitely really good. They looked pretty impressive yesterday in clobbering UCF, but, I don't think UCF is that good. They're going to be in the tournament, but I don't like them. I don't think they're a particularly good team. Arizona looks really good in crushing them 81-59, right? So people might think that win was more impressive because, Iowa State, they beat that injured Texas Tech team, whatever, who was struggling in their last few games too. So the public is going to be on Arizona here. They're only a 4-point favorite, though. 73% of tickets, 76% of the cash on them. I'd lean towards taking the points with Iowa State in this one, man. These games are all being played in Kansas City, for what that's worth. Then the second game is Kansas and Houston. This is going to be more of a defensive battle. The money looks like it's coming in on the over in this game, and this game to me profiles as an under game. I don't know about the over here. I mean, Houston's a top 6 defense in the country. They play super slow. Kansas is actually more of a mid-tempo team, but I think they're also fine playing a slow game. They're a top 10 defense as well, and they're outside the top 50 on offense. So to me, an under makes sense in this game. Now for Kansas, they did beat Houston once, and I believe this game did go under. The total in that one was 138.5, but in a semifinal game, it's going to be less. Yeah, it's at 134. In that game, I believe it did go under, because we only saw 125, I think, is where that game landed at the end. So, whatever it was a low-scoring game there. So, I expect this game to also be that way, but maybe the side will be different because Kansas took care of Houston at home. And you remember, I gave out Kansas as a play in that game because Kansas had their worst home game of the season the game prior to that against Cincinnati, and I think maybe they were looking ahead to Houston. They came out with a lot of fire after that really bad loss. Houston was coming off a couple of really tough games against Iowa State and Arizona. They had a bad scheduling setup where they had to go to Ames, Iowa, then back home against Arizona, then to Kansas to Allen Fieldhouse, just really, really difficult part of the schedule for Houston, and those were basically the only games they lost. Although they did lose to Texas Tech earlier this year and to Tennessee in tournament revenge earlier. But, that was a difficult scheduling spot for Houston, man, playing a third game in a row like that. I think this might be different this time around. Houston is actually the better team over Kansas. In fact, they're actually better on both sides of the ball, and even though they're not known as an offensive team, they're actually still significantly better on the offensive side than Kansas is. Houston, I don't know how much credit they're going to get for beating BYU yesterday. BYU, some people like them because they're a good offense, but only beating them by 7 doesn't really look that great. Houston, it was their first game in the tournament, and like Pinsey said, they were struggling with the court, but now they're used to the court, so I think they're going to have a better game this time. For Kansas, they had a tough game yesterday. They played the later game last night, and it was a tough game against TCU. TCU could have won that game. So Kansas did get a scare there. I actually thought TCU might win that game when I talked about that the bracket breakdown. TCU, they're absolutely going to make the tournament at this point, though. I don't think there are any worries about that. But Kansas did squeak by with the win. So both teams got a little bit of a scare there, but I think Houston, their win against BYU, to me, seems less impressive because TCU's been so hot recently that I actually think Kansas's win is going to look to the public more impressive. I would probably lay the points with Houston here. They're 5.5. 52% of the tickets are on Kansas. 54% of the cash on Houston. I think probably the under would be my preference here, though. But the money looks like it's coming in on the over, which is a little bit strange there. All right, what do we have left here? Hour and a half in, but luckily we have almost no hockey to talk about here. So we'll finish this show before the basketball actually starts, and then I got to figure out what to do about my bracketology. I might do my quick bracketology shortly after this, but we'll see, because I got to upload this video and stuff. All right, we haven't talked about the ACC yet either. Oh, shit. Let me see. Yeah, anybody who's, in the chat or whatever could, let me know if I've skipped anything. I don't think I'm skipping anything here. All right, we'll talk about the ACC is only playing at night, like really late at night. What did I miss? Oh, no, here it is. Yeah, it's the next game up. Miami and Virginia. We're in the ACC semifinals here. I think we're really getting the top 4 teams in the conference playing each other. Like I said, I actually think Clemson is better than North Carolina. My apologies, I guess, to the North Carolina fans. Clemson, by the way, I didn't even realize, because I told you I liked Clemson yesterday, and they handled North Carolina yesterday. Well, we'll talk about Clemson when we get to them. Let's go in order here. Miami, Virginia. These two teams played not that long ago, and Virginia won by 3 at Virginia, which I think was the only time they played this year. So Virginia, they won. I don't think they covered. Miami's been pretty impressive this year, man, even though I still kind of think they're an overrated team. They got a first-year coach here, but they've been impressive. They had a pretty good win yesterday against Louisville. Louisville, very up-and-down team, though. Virginia, kind of a more steady team that plays slow. They play good defense. Virginia got a win over NC State yesterday, which I think people will be less impressed by that. I think people will be more impressed. Oh, Miami beat a ranked Louisville team. NC State, they're going to make the tournament, man. I mean, the bubble has just been awful, and NC State already was on, like, the 8-line, 9-line. They're going to make the tournament somewhere. We'll see, what happens with them. But, yeah, Virginia, I think that win's going to be considered to be a little bit less impressive. Virginia might make some adjustments because their game against Miami at home wasn't that great. I kind of like Virginia in this one. They're minus 3.5. 62% of tickets, 85% of the cash on Miami, though. So the money is coming in on Miami. I'm not sure I really agree with that one. But, I don't really have a strong opinion on that game at all. According to KenPom, he's got Virginia 19th, which isn't really that great, and then Miami 27th. Miami much more balanced, but Virginia is the better defense, and their offense is almost as good. And they play slow, like I said, which Miami doesn't play as slow. And he does have Virginia as a very lucky team, though. They have faced a somewhat easy schedule this year, 27th in luck, according to KenPom, and that is a concern. Then Clemson and Duke is the other game. Now, Clemson, you'll see that they beat UNC by 1, and they almost blew the game. I watched the end of that game, but Clemson was winning this game by a ton, dude. They dominated this game, to be honest. Clemson was running away with this game. It really wasn't even close. I don't know how UNC made that run late in the game. Just kind of ridiculous. UNC did out-rebound Clemson, but Clemson had a total handle on that game. Clemson was winning 78% of the game. So I think the final score was a little bit misleading. However, that was a big game, man. It's a big deal when you beat North Carolina, man. And now Clemson's got to turn around and play Duke. I know this is another big game, but having to play 2 big games in a row like that, and, it's going to be a little bit of a different style because UNC tries to speed you up. Duke tries to slow you down. And while Clemson wants to slow you down as well, the problem is Duke is just way better at it. So a lot of times when you run into the same type of team stylistically, but that team is way better than you, you don't do that well. Now, Clemson did play Duke once at Duke this year. It was indeed a very slow-paced game. Duke won, and I believe they probably didn't cover. Duke won by 13. Now, there are injuries on both sides that we got to be aware of here. Clemson, which I didn't realize going into the game yesterday, they were without Carter Welling, who is one of their better players. He's one of their big men, so he didn't play yesterday. They still had a good game anyway, and I am assuming he's not playing in the ACC tournament, so that's something to keep in mind. He's not playing for Clemson. Now, of course, we know Duke is also without a couple of guys. As I mentioned yesterday, Caleb Foster is not playing probably until, basically Duke seems to be saying that he's not going to be back until, late in the NCAA tournament if Duke gets that far. So he's out. And Caden Boozer has kind of taken over that spot in the starting lineup. Now, Duke does have enough depth that they can kind of, accommodate for all of that. And Ngungba is also not playing, one of their big men, really the big man at 6'11", so they're going to have to, try to overcome that as well. Now, they did it, now Duke didn't look good yesterday. They almost lost to Florida State. They barely got by, and unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but, I didn't see the game because I was at the comedy show, but, that comedy show was really good, so I'm not disappointed in that decision, but Duke didn't have a good game. Florida State gave them a run, man, and Duke did separate themselves later in the game, it looks like, but Florida State never went away. Florida State, they really played pretty well down the stretch. They're not going to make the tournament, but, man, they could, I think, be a tournament team, Florida State. KenPom has them 57th, so, I guess they're not quite good enough there, but they did give a lot of teams some problems this year, including last night. They almost beat Duke. I think Duke, when you're the better team like that, huge favorite, 16.5-point favorite, and you get a scare, what do I always say? That team usually comes out with more intensity in the next game. They play a lot better. So I think I would have to lean towards laying the points with Duke here. Even though they're an injured team, Clemson has that injury on their side too. Clemson really had to play a tough game, and they played the later game last night too. So, that was a really nice win over UNC for them. The money is coming in on Clemson, but I don't really agree with it. Duke minus 11.5. I think I would lay it with Duke. 68% of tickets, 86% of the cash on Clemson. It is a low total in the low 130s because both teams do play really, really slow. So, all things to keep in mind there. Then we have, to finish this off, I think we only have, we have a couple of conferences left. We have the WAC action going on here. With the top two teams in the WAC finally entering the tournament. UT Arlington is playing Utah Valley. UT Arlington got the win yesterday. They covered barely, but I thought that they would. Southern Utah, not a good team. So UT Arlington, they had a win against a bad team, and what's good for them is they got adjusted to the venue, so that's good for UT Arlington. So they do have a little bit of an advantage. They played already in the tournament. Now, Utah Valley, they paid, the fee or whatever to get into this tournament. So Utah Valley, there were a lot of question marks as to whether or not they would play in this tournament. I'm glad they are because I want to see them get into the NCAA tournament, man, for the first time in program history because they are the best team in the WAC, and they're actually like a top 80-something KenPom team. Hopefully they could do it. Now, the problem with Utah Valley is they finished the season on a 6-game win streak, and they haven't played yet in the tournament, so that could disrupt their momentum a little bit, so that's not good. Now, they did finish the season with a scare on the road at Utah Tech where they barely got by, so maybe that will have them a little bit focused. And the fact that they paid the fee, the $1 million or whatever, so that they could play in this tournament, that tells you they want to be here. You know what I mean? They want to play in this thing. So that does tell you their motivation is here. They want to do it. I'm assuming their motivation would be here anyway. I assume that they want to, make the tournament for the first time ever. Utah Valley is a pretty substantial favorite here, too. They're up to 9.5, and the money has come in on them, up from 7.5 to 9.5, 60% of tickets, 66% of the cash on them. This is being played at the Orleans in Vegas. I think I would probably lean towards taking the points with Arlington, though. I believe Utah Valley beat them all 3 times this season, though. So Utah Valley has been able to handle them, but how tough is it to beat a team 4 times in the same season? I don't know, man. I mean, UT Arlington will have some adjustments to make. Maybe they just can't do it and don't match up well. They lost by 12 at home the most recent time. They lost by 21 on the road and lost by 12 on the road. So none of the games were even really that close. Utah Valley covered this number in every single one of them. But I would kind of lean towards taking the points, man, because Arlington got a game out of the way in this venue, didn't look that good. Not a strong opinion for me. And then in the other game, Utah Tech is playing Cal Baptist. Cal Baptist also hasn't played yet in this tournament. Utah Tech played last night, and they beat Abilene Christian. So they have a game under their belt in the tournament. That should be a little bit of an advantage to them as well. For Cal Baptist, what did they do against Utah Tech during the regular season? They most recently lost to Utah Tech by 5 on the road. They beat them at home by 9, and also they beat them at home by 12 in the prior games. But Cal Baptist they have not beaten Utah Tech outside of their home arena. Cal Baptist also finished the season on a 4-game win streak, so maybe their momentum could be a little bit disrupted, having to change over to tournament mode here. Utah Tech, I already talked about them. They played in the tournament last night, so not a whole lot else to say about this, but I would probably lean to taking the points again in this one with Utah Tech. Cal Baptist is up to a 6.5-point favorite. 67% of tickets, 75% of the cash on Utah Tech. Money kind of looks like it's coming back in on the Utah Tech side. I would agree with that based on, just having the advantage of having played in the tournament already. I think that's really kind of the way to lean in that one. All right, then we have the Big West and the Mountain West. I think those are the last ones I have to talk about here. Got to finish this video, man. Cal State Northridge and UC Irvine were playing. Cal State Northridge was able to beat UC San Diego, unfortunately, because I wanted to see UC San Diego. I thought they might be able to make a run in this thing. They're not the best team in this conference this year, but they're still one of the better teams. Northridge, they're not that much worse. They did get the win last night, but they have an advantage of having played in the tournament. These games were all being played in Henderson, Nevada, so just outside of Vegas. Northridge does have the advantage of already having played in the tournament. Now they're getting the top team in the conference, UC Irvine here, according to KenPom, I believe. Northridge just lost to them by 1 at home, so they played them really close. And then early in the season, they did lose at Irvine by 14. So Irvine did beat them both times, but Irvine has not played yet in this tournament. They finished the season hot, 4 games in a row, 4 wins in a row. So again, I think the advantage does go to Northridge, having played in the tournament, whereas Irvine hasn't. We don't see the percentages really here, 50-50, tickets and cash. Not really anything to draw from, but Irvine is a 5-point favorite here. Now, I think they should win, but it's tough, man. It's kind of a tough spot. I think I would take the points with Northridge. And then Cal State Fullerton is playing Hawaii, who is the 2 seed, and they've been one of the other best teams in this conference. Definitely with a chance to win the conference this year. Now, Hawaii, I think the spot sets up maybe a little better for them because they lost a 4-game win streak in a bad performance at home against Long Beach at the end of the season. The Beach went out there and got the win at basically near a different beach. Long Beach knew they weren't going to make the tournament, so I think they just went they weren't going to make the conference tournament, I mean. So they went all out for that win, I guess. So I think that's good for Hawaii in that they ended the season on a bad note and should bounce back, but it did end their winning momentum, which I guess isn't that good. But yeah, I mean, I think they'll come out, with some intensity here. And the last time they played Fullerton, they only beat them by 2 on the road. They beat them earlier in the season at home by 10. Hawaii is the better team here. Now, Fullerton did play in this tournament already, and they beat UC Davis last night. So they do have a game under their belt in the tournament, which, again, is an advantage. And the money is coming in on Fullerton. Hawaii, 5-point favorite, 50% of tickets, 90% of the cash on Fullerton. I hear a weird siren out there. I don't know what. It almost sounded like an alarm. I'm like, my alarm's not going off. I don't believe, unless somebody's breaking in. I think it would have been a lot louder if it was my alarm, man. Let me just check real quick. I'm going to check my alarm system here. Yeah, no, I got nothing going on here. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what that was. Anyway, all right. But yes, I think I would probably lean towards taking the points with Fullerton in that one, but that one really not a strong opinion. And then we have the Mountain West. They must be playing really late at night. What do we have going on here? I think we're already in the semifinals in the Mountain West, I think. Nevada and Utah State playing each other here. This tournament does set up a little bit better for Utah State now. They're going to avoid Grand Canyon, who I thought could give Utah State some problems. I think maybe I'm going to wind up being wrong, and Utah State is going to win this conference tournament, but they got kind of lucky, man, that they're going to avoid some of these better teams, although Again, the other side of the bracket is a little bit more stacked, but I thought Grand Canyon would beat Nevada and give Utah State some problems. Nevada won, though. Now, they actually beat Utah State at home back when they last played by 3. They lost on the road by 9, so they played pretty well against Utah State in both games. Maybe Utah State will be the team to make the adjustments, though, because Utah State did lose the most recent game. Utah State also played yesterday, and they blew out UNLV, which, does look more impressive. I told you I thought they would cover because they lost both games to UNLV, including getting totally embarrassed the last time they played UNLV. If you saw, I tweeted out, I tweeted out yesterday, Josh Pastner, the coach for UNLV, former Memphis coach, had this really weird rant after they beat Wyoming. I'm like, dude, he looks like he's high on something. I'm like, I don't think they're going to win their next game. Utah State, sure enough, blew them out, took them really seriously. Now, UNLV, they actually host this tournament. It's in Vegas at the Thomas and Mack, but as Pastner said, it's been a house of horrors, and he had to spell it because it sounded like he said whores. That's another place in Las Vegas, the house of horrors. Utah State, UNLV has not done well in this tournament, even though it's been on their home floor, so take that for what you want. But Utah State did beat them. They looked good in doing so. Now they get Nevada here. The money is coming in on Nevada here. Utah State -6.5, 78% of tickets, 91% of the cash coming in on Nevada. I kind of agree with that, with taking the points with Nevada here. They played Utah State difficult both times, played them tough, I should say. Utah State's win yesterday, I think, is going to look more impressive to some people, just because, UNLV kind of made some noise, whereas Nevada, I feel like they've been a bit under the radar this season. And they're not that bad. If you look at KenPom, Nevada, they're 73rd in KenPom, which is not that bad. They play slow. They're pretty balanced. Utah State, I believe, wants to go faster than that. More of a mid-tempo team. They're definitely the better team, but Nevada, does have some balance, and they're the less lucky team, according to KenPom. So, Josh, what's up, man? Thanks for hanging out. Yeah, I'm having strokes all over the place. Dude, I have, I don't know, I'm allergic to everything, man. I don't know, the dust, whatever. I'm always having, sinus problems. I don't know what it is. It's really dry air in here. I think that's really the problem. And then we have perhaps a bubble battle here between New Mexico and San Diego State. It is possible that the winner of this game is going to play themselves into the tournament, man. I'm not going to say that for sure, but it's a huge game for both teams. That's all you got to know. The motivation is going to be there for both teams. Plus, obviously, the winner of this game is going to be in the final and have a shot to get the auto bid here. So, this is a good game. New Mexico beat San Jose State yesterday. That's not unexpected. San Jose State coming off a very unexpected upset of Boise. I don't know how that happened. One of the most shocking results of the entire conference tournament season, to be honest. But not shocking was that New Mexico beat them, and I believe they covered in that game. Not shocked by that. Beat them by 16. San Diego State had a decent win yesterday as well. I believe they wound up covering against Colorado State. I thought Colorado State might cover in that game. I think that's the way I leaned. But that was a more difficult game for San Diego State. So New Mexico might set up a little bit better in this one because they played a much easier game, but it does also mean they haven't battle-tested themselves in this tournament yet. The money is coming in on San Diego State. They're a 2.5-point favorite. 55% of tickets, 89% of the cash on San Diego State. Now, San Diego State is the better defense, so there is that. And they actually play a little bit faster than you would think this season. New Mexico still, I think, is the faster-paced team, though. Yeah, 45th in the country. Although, believe it or not, San Diego State, we're used to them being the slow-paced team. They actually play somewhat fast as well. They're a bit lopsided, though. They are really good on defense and not that good on offense. So kind of a weird profile that I don't really love. KenPom only has them 3 ranking spots higher than New Mexico. New Mexico is, believe it or not, better on defense than offense this year and more balanced. I actually kind of like New Mexico in that game, plus the points, but we'll see what happens in that game. I don't know. It seems like it's always San Diego State, but we'll see. and we'll see what happens in the finals matchup there. Dude, both of those games are actually good. Those Mountain West semifinals there and the final, all those teams left are solid teams, competitive teams. All right. And I think that's it for college basketball finally. So let's run down the hockey and the NBA. Going to try to get out of here before the games start at 11:30. I think it'll be doable. Play in either of them. The first one is the Kings at the Islanders. Now, most of the hockey teams played yesterday, so we don't really have to deal with too many hockey games today. I don't think either of these teams played yesterday, though. I think these were a couple of the only teams that were off. Now, the Kings actually haven't played since Tuesday, and they lost at Boston. And now they're only going from Boston to New York with a couple days off to try to redeem themselves, get over that loss. I think it's a good spot for the Kings, and they've actually been a decent road team, 16-8-8. That's not too bad on the road this year. The Islanders have had a good season. They're coming off a couple of wins. Most importantly, though, they're returning home from a road trip, and I don't like that spot. They went out to the Pacific Coast, actually. They've been on the road for more than a week. They've had a couple of days off, and I think that kind of exacerbates the return home spot in a lot of ways. A lot of times you come back and you're distracted. You got to get back to home life. You got stuff to do at home. It's a bad spot. Now, the issue is their next game up is not a game they're going to be looking ahead to, Calgary, so they don't have the look ahead here. And, in fact, they're actually playing a team that beat them on the road trip, LA. So the Islanders might actually show focus here. I would still have to lean to the Kings, though. I considered putting this on my card, and then I was like, I don't think I could do it, man. But I lean to the Kings here. There's no way that I would play a team returning home from a road trip. That's just that, a long trip like that. Islanders down from minus 135 to minus 129. 72% of tickets, 88% of the cash on them. But I disagree with that cash percentage, and it might change. I would lean to the Kings on the money line there as the underdog. Edmonton and St. Louis is the other game. Edmonton actually played yesterday, but they got absolutely destroyed by Dallas. So they could be in a bounce back mode here. They will switch goalies, I assume, back to Ingram here. Maybe that's better because they won his last 2 games. They won 3 of his last 4. So, maybe that's better than having Jari in there. I don't know, man. Edmonton is playing a 4th game in 6 days, though, all in different cities, and that's not easy to do. But, after last night's shellacking, even though it was against a really good Dallas team, I think they might be angry and show up with some focus here. Meanwhile, St. Louis is in a pretty bad spot because they upset Carolina yesterday, and they're also on a back-to-back. They've had travel between all of these games. They're playing a third game in 4 days, a 4th game in 6 days with travel between all of them, and a 5th and 8 also with travel between all of them. Upset Carolina on the road yesterday somehow. I have no idea how. Now they're returning home from that. Could be a letdown spot where I think Edmonton's in kind of the bounce back spot. I like Edmonton in this game. They're down from minus 160 to minus 150. 75% of tickets, 91% of the cash on them. I considered both games for being on my card today, to be honest, but I think they both just can't quite get there. But I would lean to Edmonton in this one. In the redemption spot where St. Louis is in, I think, a major letdown spot. But mentally, they're going to get up for a game against Edmonton because it is a big game against, one of the better teams, I should say, in the Western Conference. So I'm going to stay away from it, but those are my thoughts there. Of course, the JavaScript is now no longer working, even though I was just able to go to the NHL. Wouldn't let me go to the NBA. Let's finish this off, man. We got the NBA, and then we're done. NBA, I don't have much here in the NBA, man. There's really no game that I even really have a strong opinion on. Memphis is at Detroit. Memphis on a long losing streak here, I believe. Let me see. Yeah, they've lost 6 games in a row. They played yesterday, though, and they're in a very dreaded. Look at the scheduling spot. They're playing a 4th game in 5 days. Is that right? They played the 9th, 10th, 12th, and 13th. That is brutal, dude. That almost never happens in the NBA anymore. A 4th game in 5 days. I know they've lost all those games, and theoretically they should get up for a game against Detroit, but you're not going to find me playing on a team that's playing a 4th game in 5 days. Although it is, that type of spot is going to be factored into the line, though, but maybe not enough. Detroit, they're coming off a blowout win yesterday over Philadelphia. They're playing a fourth game in 6 days, and they do have a tournament team, a playoff team in Toronto, playoffs on deck. So, you could make the argument they're kind of in a sandwich spot here after blowing out Philly, although it was a Philly team that has nobody in their lineup right now. That Philly team, everyone is injured or suspended, so maybe they won't really be feeling too high on themselves about that. But, yeah, I mean, I don't want anything to do with this game. Pistons are a 16-point favorite, and it looks like the money is still coming in on them. 72% of tickets, 83% of the cash on them. The Grizzlies are, of course, playing with basically none of their typical starters either, so I think I would probably still lay the points with the Pistons in that one, but how bad that spot is. A 4th and 5 is ridiculous. I don't think I've seen that in the NBA for like years, man. I can't remember the last time I've seen it. The Knicks are going to be at the Pacers here. The Knicks blew out Utah in their last game, and now they're finishing a road trip. And it could get to a point where maybe you're getting a little bit tired. They're actually playing a 5th game in 8 days, I believe is what this is, and a 6th game in 10 days, all in different cities, and a 7th and 11, all in different cities. So that's not easy. The Knicks could, potentially run out of steam a little bit here. They were on the Pacific Coast, and they went into elevation. They blew out Utah. Now they're going to Indiana, who they might not pay that much attention to. They do have Golden State on deck, which is somewhat of a bigger game just because it is the Warriors. Indiana, it looks like they're trying, I guess, because they did actually put in a good effort yesterday in their game that they played in the return home spot against Phoenix. They still actually played pretty well. Actually, no, they lost by, what am I saying? I thought they lost by 5. They lost by 15. But they lost by 5 in the previous game. So I don't know. I don't know how much effort you're really getting out of Indiana. But second game back home is usually a better spot, man. Even though I know they're on the back-to-back, but a lot of times when a team returns home, like I said, it's a distraction spot. Teams don't play well, but a lot of times if they don't play well, they show up and they play better in the next game. And I think they'll at least try to show up for a game against the Knicks. I think this might be one of the rare spots where you do get effort out of the Pacers. I would lean towards taking the points with the Pacers here. Plus, the Knicks, they're really not a good road team, man. You're asking them to lay 13.5 now on the road. I would not do that. 65% of the tickets, 77% of the cash on the Knicks. Playing a 7th game in 11 days, and they're only 18 and 16 on the road. That's not something I would want to do. And the Pacers, 10 out of their 15 wins have come at home, so they do play better at home. So I would lean towards taking the points there. Phoenix at Toronto. Phoenix, like I said, did play yesterday. They got kind of an easy win over the Pacers, though. They're playing a 3rd game in 4 days, 4th game in 6 days, all in different cities. And they do have Boston, Minnesota, San Antonio all on deck, and maybe those are bigger games. I don't know. Playing Toronto here. Toronto is going to be a playoff team, though, I'm pretty sure. Toronto not as good at home either. So, maybe Phoenix will give you an effort here. Phoenix has been a good covering team this year, one of the better covering teams against the spread this year. Raptors are not good at home, 17 and 16. That's pretty bad. Phoenix, 17 and 14 on the road. They're actually a fairly good road team. For what it's worth. I basically said the Knicks are not that. The Knicks are just way worse on the road than they are at home. Phoenix is actually just decent both ways, but Toronto is actually worse at home than they are on the road, believe it or not. Now, Toronto's coming off a bad loss to New Orleans. That's pretty ugly, and they didn't play yesterday. They're returning home from a road trip, but it was only a Tuesday, Wednesday trip, so I don't think it's going to be a trip where they're going to, a return where they're going to be massively distracted. But they do play Detroit next, and that is a big game, so I guess there is maybe a little bit of a worry of a look ahead there. The Raptors are up to a 4.5-point favorite. Some of it is because you have to factor in the fact that the Suns are on a back-to-back. I think I would probably still lay it with the Raptors here, but I don't love it by any means. 59% of tickets and cash on them. I don't even really want to give out an opinion in that game, to be honest. Cleveland at Dallas is in the first game of the Amazon Prime doubleheader. Cleveland just lost to Orlando. Not a great loss for them there. So maybe they will be in bounce-back mode after that. But they're playing a they're actually playing a fourth game. I was going to say they're playing a 4th game in 5 days. No, they're playing a 4th game in 6 days, though, which is not that easy to do either, of course. Dallas coming into this game, let me see. Dallas beat Memphis in their last game, but that's good for Dallas because they broke a long losing streak. You know, when you're losing every game like this and you finally break that loss streak, sometimes it gives you some new momentum, and it did help them the last time they did it. They did win their next game, and they should at least have motivation against Cleveland here. But they're also playing a fourth game in 6 days. They're playing a sixth game in 9 days, I think is what that is, and a seventh game in 11. That is really, really difficult as well. All in different cities, and the worst thing about it is they're returning home from a road trip, of course. So, you know I hate the road trip return spots, man. They've been on the road since March 3rd, and they're returning home from that road trip. Again, you got to get back to home life. It's on a back-to-back. Could be a distracted spot, although theoretically you should get up for a game against Cleveland, but this is a really difficult spot for Dallas. I can't get involved in this game at all. It's a horrible spot, though. I think really for, actually for Cleveland, I think it could be more of a bounce-back spot after that loss to Orlando. So I think I would lay the points with Cleveland in this one if I was going to play it. They're minus 13.5 on the road, but like I said, in the NBA, there are some situations where it makes sense to lay the points on the road. The last time I said that, it was correct, and it was a blowout road win for Detroit in revenge against Brooklyn. 55% of tickets, 66% of the cash on the Cavs. Money seems to be agreeing with the Cavs. I agree with it as well. Unfortunately, the teams the Celtics are vying for the number 2 spot against are all playing really easy games today, so fuck that. The Knicks and Cleveland. While the Celtics just had to play one of their most difficult stretches on the road against the Spurs and the Thunder. And they played really well in those games and still lost both of them. New Orleans coming off beating Toronto here. Now they're going to play Houston here. This is New Orleans versus Houston, if I didn't say that. New Orleans, they've actually given Houston problems this year. They beat Houston outright once, and I think they covered in the game at Houston. And I think we actually won plays on both games on New Orleans, believe it or not. This is not what I'm going to touch, though. New Orleans did just beat Toronto coming into this game. I think they had yesterday off. Houston had yesterday off, too. They're playing a third game in 4 days, a fourth game in 6 days with travel between all of it. They just got absolutely drilled by Denver on the road. So, in theory, they should bounce back from that. But the problem is they're coming out of elevation, coming back home with a game that you at least get way up for emotionally. And they have the Lakers on deck, which might be a look ahead. So I don't love it, although Houston might show up with some focus just because the Pelicans have given them issues recently. But I still think I would probably take the points of the Pelicans here. Rockets are 7-point favorites, 67% of tickets on them, 61% of the cash coming back on the Pelicans. So the money is on the Pelicans there. I tend to lean that way as well, but not a strong opinion. Minnesota versus Golden State. At Golden State, I should say. Minnesota just had an embarrassing loss at the Clippers where they gave up 153 points to the Clippers. A lot of times when that happens, you'll see a team come out with a much better effort the next game. Potentially you could look at Golden State to go under their team total this time because this Minnesota team, they're not a bad defense, and I think they're going to come out with a lot more defensive intensity here. But the problem is they do have Oklahoma City on deck, so maybe they'll be looking ahead to that. But this is an Amazon Prime game at least, so the team should get up for it. Now, Golden State, they're still dealing with a bunch of injuries. They returned home in their last game. They had a bad game on Tuesday against Chicago, losing in overtime as a favorite. So Golden State should bounce back from that. They play the Knicks next, but they're not going to overlook Minnesota, man. And Golden State with 2 days off as well. I think Golden State, both teams should be focused here, but I do kind of like the spot for Golden State. They're still without Curry, very injured team, so that has to be taken into account, but it is factored into the line, of course. So the fact that the T-Wolves are laying 6.5 on the road, but 74% of tickets, 66% of the cash on them. I'd lean towards the Warriors here plus the points. So that's the way that I would look at that game. I would, take the points of the Warriors there. Hold on, let me just make sure that I didn't have a play in the 11:30 game right now because that was St. Louis. Oh yeah, my plays are both at night, so we're definitely fine for me to get those videos out on Instagram. All right, but yeah, I lean towards Golden State plus the points. Utah at Portland. Utah just had a blowout loss basically at home to the Knicks. Maybe a good thing for them to just forget about it, go out on the road. They didn't play yesterday, so maybe they'll refocus. First game of the road trip usually is a focus spot for a team. Don't know how much effort Utah is putting into these games, though. They're kind of an injured team just playing out the stretch here. Portland did just put in a pretty big effort against Charlotte, just to fall short by 2 points against Charlotte. So that was a pretty big game for them. They're staying at home off of that, but I think that was a bigger game because Charlotte is so hyped right now. And Portland does have probably a bigger game on deck against Philadelphia. They start a road trip at the very least, which is usually a spot that you focus on. So I guess I would lean to the Jazz here. Blazers are a 15-point favorite, which I don't know if the Blazers should really be that much of a favorite against most teams in the NBA. 51% of the tickets on the Blazers, 51% of the cash on the Jazz. 51% is not a huge percentage, obviously, but it looks like the money is sort of indicating on the Jazz. I agree with it. And then we have Chicago at the Clippers. Chicago, after that overtime upset of Golden State, they actually played again after that. They played yesterday, and they lost at the Lakers, where I thought they were in a decent spot to cover against the Lakers yesterday. I worried about it because they were coming off that overtime win, and I think they missed the cover by a half point last night, losing by 12 against the Lakers. Yeah, they missed by like a point, almost a point, basically. That would have been probably a brutal loss if you had Chicago plus the points there, which was one of my leans, and it was my second strongest NBA lean, but at least we got there with my strongest one, so I'm happy about that. Now, Chicago is staying in LA. They're playing a back-to-back. They're playing a fourth game in 6 days, though, all in different cities, which is, or no, not all in different cities, all in different arenas, which is not that easy to do, but at least they are staying in LA. The Clippers, like I said, they're coming off that game where they put up 153 points against Minnesota and blew them out after beating the Knicks, too, so they could definitely be in letdown mode off of that. Those are some really nice wins for the Clippers there. Unfortunately, they only have Sacramento on deck tomorrow. It is an ESPN game, but yeah, I mean, Sacramento not really a look ahead, but this is a difficult one. The Clippers are up to 13, minus 13 here, 76% of the tickets, 84% of the cash on the Clippers. I think I would lean to taking the points with the Bulls still in that one, but yeah, that's a difficult read for me. And that's going to do it, man. So once again, let's check my 2 plays here. The money is still agreeing with me on Davidson, and it's starting to agree with me on UCLA. There we go. I told you the market would start moving. There you go. Hopefully it winds up that way tonight, though. But those are my 2 plays. One more time, the only plays today, Davidson plus the points in the Atlantic 10 and UCLA plus the points. I know how crazy that looks, but yeah, we're going to do that. Find the best number on both. Of course, I think you can get 2 on Davidson out there. UCLA, you might be able to get 6. Let's get it done. Let's keep the heater going, man. Learn to Toad on Twitter. Learn to Toad on Instagram. You know the drill. Like, subscribe to the channel here. Give me good comments, you know. Listen on audio. Give me good reviews on audio, Apple and Spotify. Covered in UC is my UC channel on YouTube. You can check that out as well. Patreon.com/LearnToToad to get some bonus UC stuff. Losercast, the comedy podcast that I'm on, will be back every Tuesday night. And that's going to do it, man. I'll be back because I got to do the bracketology that I usually do on Thursday. So I got to get that out probably shortly. I might come back and do it before I eat lunch. So after I get this stuff uploaded, be on the lookout for that. Subscribe and you'll get the notification for that. I'll be back. That'll do it for now. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Peace.